Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. This is Lightblade, and well, in this one I'll be doing an in-depth overview on the Templar hero talents. This is the last in a 3-part cover of all the changes that the War Within will bring for us. I'll leave the previous parts in the description of this one if you want to check those out. And well, with that being said, let's start with the video. So let's start by describing what the idea behind Templar is. What is its purpose? I would describe Templar as having its primary focus on cleave rather than AoE, with strong priority damage, also making it excellent for pure single target fights, while still having some tools that do uncapped AoE in the case that you're doing big pulls. The bulk of the damage that Templar adds to us is conditional AoE and Imperial Hammers plus 5 to 4 target cleave with Hammer of Light and Final Verdict depending on the build you are using. Contrary to HERALD, it doesn't add support to your team, but instead of that gives you more personal survivability, adding small procs of Shield of Vengeance and more personal damage reduction. Like the actual Templar Knights from our world that were used as shock troopers to assault vulnerable or important areas of the enemy, you will be doing something similar, providing priority damage and focusing large amounts of it onto key enemies using the synergy of talents like Judge, Jury, and Executioner plus Bangers of Justice to dispatch your targets. But we'll talk about those synergies and more when we get to that part of the video. All these things considered, after the nerfs of Herald of the Sun, Templar is pretty close in terms of output, just with a different damage profile. While not as hyped as Herald, I was surprised to find it very enjoyable to play because of its instant burst, especially when you have 5 or less targets. It's very explosive. I personally see Templar as a great answer to our normally weak priority damage and will guarantee see play in Mythic Plus dungeons when the profile is needed, and as our de facto single target option in raids. Now let's talk about the talents themselves. Okay guys, let's talk about the Templar hero talents. And first we have to talk about the talents that make it work, the engine of the Templar. Unlike Herald that does have some really important parts of its engine in the Retribution side of the talent trees, Templar doesn't, it can work off itself for the most part. Okay, let's talk about the first part of the engine, which is Light's Guidance. So, whenever you cast Wake of Ashes, you have 12 seconds to cast Hammer of Light. Hammer of Light is a 5-cost holy power that does a ton of damage to your primary target and deals half of that to nearby 4 enemy targets. Additionally, you call down Imperial Hammers from the sky to strike 3 nearby enemies for a decent amount of holy damage each. So this is going to start everything for the Templar. We have to talk next of Shake the Heavens, because after you cast Hammer of Light, you'll call down Imperial Hammer on a nearby enemy every 2 seconds for 8 seconds. So basically you're gonna throw 4 extra Imperial Hammers with this talent alone, but we can improve that further with the next part of the engine, which is Higher Calling. So, Crusader Strike, Hammer of Wrath, and Blade of Justice extend the duration of Shake the Heavens by 1 second. Pretty self-explanatory. Any flavor of Crusader Strike is going to do it. Crusading Strikes, Templar Strikes. And you just have to spam these holy power builders, just use them as often as possible so you can get more drops on those little hammers from Shake the Heavens. This is really important because that brings us to the next and final part of the engine, which is Wrathful Descent. So whenever Imperial Hammers critically strike, 60% of its damage is dealt to nearby enemies. This is what I call our conditional cleave. The more critical strike you have, the more reliable this is going to be, the more AoE damage you can do, aside from your cleave damage, from your Light's Guidance and Hammer of Light and stuff. So yeah, you really want to get a lot of critical strike with Templar. This is the main reason why we also use Avenging Wrath Might with it instead of using Crusade, because although Crusade gives us a ton more haste and a bit more duration on our wings with Radiant Glory, Might just gives us nice 20% extra critical chance whenever we have wings, which makes our Wrathful Descent cleave a lot more reliable, especially in Mythic Plus situation. It also comes with an extra little bonus. Whenever something is hit by an Imperial Hammer, it deals 5% extra reduced damage to you for 8 seconds, which is just nice, it's some extra personal survivability. Now let's go to the next talents. Okay, now that we know the core engine of the Templar, we can talk about the rest of its talents. So the first one here is a choice node. It's between Zealous Vindication. Hammer of Light instantly calls down 2 Imperial Hammers on your target when it's cast, or From Whom the Bell Tolls. A Divine Toll grants up to 100% increase damage to your next 3 judgments when striking only 1 enemy. This amount is reduced by 20% for each additional target struck. So basically, The Zealous Vindication is going to be your option for 99% of the times in Mythic Plus dungeons, because you are always going to have a lot of targets there. The basic number of targets is around 5 in Mythic Plus situation. So you want your extra Empyrean Hammers to drop because maybe they crit and then you can do some nice AoE cleave damage. While the other option, From Whom the Bell Tolls, is basically your single target patchwork fight choice, because your judgments are going to hit a lot harder after you throw your Divine Toll. So yeah, basically this is just going to be the raid option, and Zealous Vindication is going to be a Mythic Plus option. Let's go to the next one. Okay, up next we have a defensive situation talent, Sacrosanct Crusade. Whenever you cast Wake of Ashes, you gain a Shield of Vengeance at 10% effectiveness. This is not only, by the way, defensive option. Shield of Vengeance explodes and does considerable amount of damage, so you're going to just get a small Shield of Vengeance every time you cast a Wake of Ashes. Pretty simple, pretty nice utility. Okay, next up we have another utility talent, and this one is a choice node between Bonds of Fellowship and Unrelenting Charger. Let's talk about Bonds of Fellowship first. So you receive 20% less damage from Blessing of Sacrifice. Each time its target takes damage, you gain 4% movement speed up to a maximum of 40%. So this is really nice if you are using Blessing of Sacrifice constantly. It's really good if you want to protect the squishy target while also not putting yourself in danger. But to get the most of that movement speed bonus from this, you normally would have to be sacking your tank, you know. And yeah, obviously that 20% less damage taking helps there, but it's not a very consistent movement speed boost that you're going to be getting. So now let's talk about the other option, the Charger. So Divine Steed lasts 2 seconds longer and increases your movement speed by an additional 30% for the first 3 seconds. So this is just a really good mobility upgrade. If you pair this up with an extra point here on Seasoned Warhorse, you get an 8-second horse, which is a super long one. And yeah, this is just super good and super consistent. While I think Bonds of Fellowship will have its uses, especially if you have someone really squishy that you want to protect, for most cases Unrelenting Charger is, I think, going to be the better option. Now let's go to the next one. Okay, up next we have another choice node, and this is Endless Wrath versus Sanctification. So let's read Endless Wrath first. Calling down an Empyrean Hammer has a 10% chance to reset the cooldown of Hammer of Wrath and make it usable on any target regardless of their health. So yeah, remember, that 10% might look a bit lowish, but we throw Empyrean Hammers really often. We can even throw a ton of them with Shake the Heavens if we extend it long enough. This talent even helps us extend our Shake the Heavens more because we get our Hammer of Wrath to cast it on any target that we want, you know. So yeah, it's a pretty decent talent. I think this is probably going to be your option for most single target encounters where you want to throw Hammers of Wrath. Mostly you're going to be throwing your Blades of Justice on AoE situations, so this doesn't help too much there. But let's read Sanctification. So, casting Judgment increases the damage of Empyrean Hammer by 10% for 10 seconds. Multiple applications may overlap. So this is going to be your go-to option for cleave and AoE situations, because just throwing a Judgment is going to give you extra damage on your Empyrean Hammers, no matter where they fall or what Empyrean Hammer, you know. It's just all flat Empyrean Hammers have 10% extra damage. That means if they cleave, and because they crit, they also have that extra 10% damage, and multiple applications may overlap, you know. You can just throw let's say Divine Toll, then you throw your Judgment, and your next Empyrean Hammers are going to be hitting 20% hard, you know. So yeah, I think Sanctification is just going to be your cleave option, while Endless Wrath might be better for single target. Let's go to the next one. Okay, next up we have Hammerfall. So Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm calls down an Empyrean Hammer on a nearby enemy. While Shake the Heavens is active, this effect calls down an additional Empyrean Hammer. As you can see, everything in the Templar hero talent revolves around those little hammers after you do your big hit with your Hammer of Light. So this is just making your Holy Power spenders now drop Empyrean Hammers. It's really important that you spam your spenders while you are in Shake the Heavens, so you can get more chances of cleaving with your Empyrean Hammers with Wrathful Descent, because maybe they crit and you can get some extra cleave from there. So just really good talent. Let's go to the next one. Okay, next one is Undisputed Ruling. This is a pretty simple one, but really strong one. Hammer of Light applies Judgment to all your targets. They're all the targets that it hits, so 5 things, and increases your haste by 15% for 6 seconds. So this is really just good to start your rotation off. You know, you do your Wake of Ashes, you have your 5 Holy Power, you Hammer of Light, you have 15% extra haste for a few seconds, so you can just keep spamming your abilities, getting the Shake the Heavens going, spam more Holy Power spenders so you can get even more Empyrean Hammers to drop. Maybe they crit, so they cleave, and so on and so forth. Really simple, but very strong. Okay, the last talent of the Templar Hero talent and its capstone is Light's Deliverance. You gain a stack of Light's Deliverance when you call down an Imperial Hammer. Yeah, we already saw that we call those hammers really often with our spenders, we call them with Shake the Heavens, we call them with our basic Hammer of Light. So yeah, those stacks are going to appear really often. While Wake of Ashes and Hammer of Light are unavailable, you consume 60 stacks of Light's Deliverance, empowering yourself to cast Hammer of Light an additional time for free. This is a really strong capstone. It's basically what I would call like Mega Divine Arbiter, because it's going to allow you to cast your Hammer of Light an additional time. That's going to proc also the effects of the normal Hammer of Light. You know, you're going to get the extra 15% haste, you're going to drop more of those little Imperial Hammers that may cleave with Rattle Descent. So just a really good package in the Templar Hero talents. All of them work really well together and mesh really fine. Okay, now let's talk about the different builds you can do with Templar. Okay, so this is a part we didn't do in the Herald of the Sun video, mostly because Herald of the Sun has its build kind of set in stone. You know, there's very little change that you can do for Herald because it's a bit one-dimensional. You buff your Divine Storm a lot, you do a lot of damage with your dot effects, and that's pretty much it. But the Templar does have some builds that you can use. Actually, it has two builds that I personally been using in the beta, and they both are working just fine. So let's go with the first one. Okay, so the first build that we're going to be talking about, this is Judge, Jury, and Executioner build. This one is really strong because of the feedback loop that it has between Judge, Jury, and Executioner and Vanguards of Justice. With the Judge, Jury, and Executioner, your Divine Storm has a 40% chance to cause your next final verdict to hit an additional 3 targets, so you're going to be hitting 4 things in total. That feedback loop with Vanguards of Justice is that those targets hit by the final verdict will take 50% increased damage from your next Divine Storm as well. So those 4 targets are just gonna get blasted by both final verdicts and Divine Storms. This build is good up to 8 target cleave. And why do I say 8 target cleave when Judge, Jury, and Executioner only hits 4 things? This is because the differences in damage values of Divine Storm versus Final Verdict. We also have to take in consideration things like Tempest of the Lightbringer that give Divine Storm passively just 20% extra damage, and Final Reckoning because whenever we use this, Final Verdict will get 30% increased damage and Divine Storm will only get 15. So having said that, things go like this. Without cooldowns, hitting 7 things with Divine Storm is the equivalent of hitting 4 things with Final Verdict. With cooldowns, and with that I mean Final Reckoning, hitting 8.5 things with Divine Storm is the equivalent of hitting 4 things with Final Verdict. If we average those 2 numbers out, we get that at around 8 targets is where this build is going to make its breakpoint, you know, and it's going to be less effective beyond that. Having said that, this build is really fun to play and will see play in Mythic Plus dungeons that don't have a high density of mobs and can even be used in 2 target cleave or council fights in raid situations. And well, this is the other build that I wanted to show you guys, so I'm not gonna delve too much into this one, but this is the uncapped AoE build that you can use with Templar. It's really simple. It's basically the Herald Retribution Talent build, just transplanted into Templar. This gives you back all your uncapped AoE damage dots like Consecrated Blade, you still have Burn to Ash, and you have Searing Light for an extra consecration. It's just very simple, and it does get the job done when there's just too many mobs. Playing Templar in Mythic Plus was a very nice surprise. Since I did most of my testing with Herald, I wrote off Templar as just being the raid spec, but after some changes and using it in actual Mythic Plus, I see it has great potential, giving us Retribution Paladins options to have better and more optimized setups for different situations. And well, that's going to be the video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone.